Hello, and welcome back to another episode of MoJo JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the one and only Powerpuff Girls / JoJo's Bizarre Adventure recap and discussion podcast. I'm Raven.
And I'm Alison.
So let me see. I think in terms of PPG news, mainly there's just the first issue of the Powerpuff Girls comic from Dynamo Comics came out this Wednesday. The first 3 issues will be written by Kelly Thompson, and then the next 3 are going to be by Paulina Ganuccio. Today we are going to be discussing the Rowdyruff boys and Dynamo. So this is the first time we've combined 2 half-hour episodes to once. This might be a longer episode, so that might be nice for some folks. And next week we will finally get to discussing the first part of JoJo, Phantom Blood. Start by recapping the Rowdyruff boys. We start off with MoJo attacking the city with a laser cannon and blowing up everything in sight. The girls arrive on the scene and Blossom uses her laser eye beams to melt the cannon. They beat him up and send him to jail. Another day, MoJo is in the top part of his volcano layer observatory. It's kind of like flying and hovering through the city, and the military fires on him. The girls fling him into space and send him to jail. Yet another day, MoJo tramples the city in his robo JoJo. The girls knock it over and he falls out into the street. The girls gloat about their victory before sending MoJo to jail a 3rd time. He screams and rages and plots to destroy the girls by fighting fire with fire. He decides to call Professor Utonium and pretends to be a college student doing a report on the girls, but ultimately decides that the recipe is too girlish, and gathers Snip's, Snail's, and the talking dog's tail and combines them in the prison toilet. He flushes the toilet, and it explodes throughout the jail, revealing 3 little boys in red, green, and blue. "My children," MoJo exclaims, but they punch him. They introduce themselves as Boomer, Brick, and Butch, the Rowdyruff boys, and say they're here to kick some butt. Brick and Boomer are voiced by Rob Paulson, and Butch is voiced by Roger L. Jackson, who of course is the voice of MoJo JoJo. MoJo convinces them not to kick his butt, because his butt is as rotten as theirs, and that they should fight the Powerpuff Girls instead. They break MoJo out of jail and confront the girls as they save the city from a giant octopus monster. They fight each other, but the Rowdyruff boys won't be satisfied until they can make the girls cry. They are evenly matched at first, and take turns throwing each other into buildings and into the street. The girls get thrown into City Hall, and just as they are shaking off their injuries, the Rowdyruff boys throw a school bus, a plane, and a boat into the air. The girls easily catch the vehicles, and decide they need to take the fight out of Townsville before any citizens get hurt. They make it partway out of town when the Rowdyruff boys decide to kick in the afterburners, which seems to be some sort of fart-based power that causes the girls to cough and choke, and they fall through the air. Before they can recover, the boys hurl them down into the street below with the force of an explosion. Finally satisfied and thinking that they've killed the Powerpuff Girls, the Rowdyruff boys head back to MoJo's pad. Citizens of Townsville weep over the crater in the ground where the girls landed, and their love brings the girls back to life. The girls apologize for not being good enough heroes and make to leave forever when Ms. Bellum calls them back and tells them they've simply been attacking the problem the wrong way. Instead of fighting the evil little boys, they should be nice to them. They head to MoJo's lair, and batting their lashes, they plan to kiss on their evil counterparts' cheeks. The Rowdyruff boys freak out and explode back into a pile of Snips, Snails, and Puppy Dog Tail. MoJo is arrested for a 4th time and curses the Powerpuff Girls as he's sent away. Blossom and Bubbles are all giggling, say they kind of like kissing, but Buttercup is grossed out. Which is funny because she's the first of the girls to actually have a crush on someone, Ace of the Gangrene Gang. So perhaps she was grossed out by the Rowdyruff boys, or has just sworn off crushes after last time, which is fair because her last crush almost killed her sisters. This is the first appearance of the Rowdyruff boys, and they won't have any major role in the show again until 2003. This is the first time the girls are defeated this badly and ultimately revived. The Rowdyruff boys are the show's first on-screen deaths. Bubbles calls Mr. Cooper Mr. Looper, which is likely a reference to Sesame Street, where Big Bird mistakenly called Mr. Hooper Mr. Pooper Mr. Looper instead of his name. The ingredients chosen to make the Powerpuff Girls and the Rowdyruff boys both come from the early 19th century nursery rhyme, That's What Little Boys Are Made Of. Because the poem is so short, I'm going to read it. What are little boys made of? What are little boys made of? Snips, snails, and puppy dog tails, that's what little boys are made of. What are little girls made of? What are little girls made of? Sugar and spice and everything nice, that's what little girls are made of. Which kind of makes me wonder what ingredients would be chosen to make non-binary kids. Like, would it be like some stuff non-binary people are stereotypically fond of, like frogs and button-up shirts with loud prints, or another list of nonsensical rhyming ingredients? So before I move on to our questions, did you have anything to add?
Perhaps it would be both, that you would have the snips and snails, puppy dog tails, plus the sugar, spice, and everything nice added in there.
Perhaps.
The one guy that did one of the Rowdyruff boys, is he also like the voice of like Yakko and Pinky from Pinky and the Brain?
Yes, in the Animaniacs, yeah. And he did the voice of Raphael and Donatello in 2 different versions of the Ninja Turtles. The 80s one he voiced Raphael, and in the 2012 one he voiced Donatello.
Okay, I don't know why it's important to me, but I always like to say what the original broadcast was. So this one was April 7th, 1999. I think it had some other notes. When they trip MoJo's robot, it's kind of like in Star Wars when they knock over the at walker. Like they just put like a rope around the legs to make it fall over.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
The ray that MoJo used at the beginning, I mean, it kind of looks like he just like basically killed a bunch of people. Although these 2 episodes, there's a lot of destruction and where you think people had to have died. And I'm also like, how are they always rebuilding Townsville?
I know, what kind of budget do they have?
Like, there should be crap that's always under construction. Like the streets in in the United States where there's always like ongoing construction. I was just sort of wondering, because MoJo gets in so much trouble and we saw the military involved, why haven't they put MoJo in a stronger prison? They just keep putting him in the regular jail with everyone else, but he keeps escaping, I'm assuming. When he's in prison and he goes crazy and he's kind of acting like an ape, there's a tire swing in his cell, which I'm pretty sure wouldn't normally be in a cell. I was also thinking that because the Powerpuff Girls keep messing up his plans, that MoJo just needs to move to an entirely different city. I mean, I know they can fly and maybe get to him, but it might be if he was on the other side of the world, he could get away with more stuff. Why does he live in the same city as them?
You want to go somewhere with like weaker and punier heroes or something?
I thought it was interesting that the talking dog is a prison guard. When they think that they've defeated the girls, the Rowdyruff boys, it looks like they dump Gatorade on MoJo in celebration. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to say was just like what the longer episodes brings to the show. It allows for more build up, more story, and more character development, because it's kind of like they're always just rushing to the conclusion, to the fight, and we get a little bit more going on with the story.
Right. Okay, so I have 2 questions for the last 2 episodes here. Well, just for this one, really, but since we're technically doing the last 2 episodes of the season, why not do more than one question? So my first one is, which Powerpuff Girl do you relate to the most? So I feel like in some ways I can relate to all of the Powerpuff Girls. You know, I have Blossom's perfectionism, Bubbles' love of animals and stuffed animals, Buttercup's stubbornness, but I think probably I relate the most to Bubbles and Buttercup.
I probably relate the most to Blossom and Bubbles. Although I am stubborn, I don't really think I'm like super tough. But I do like Buttercup. I like watching her. I just don't think I'm like her.
And my other question is, after this season, who is your favorite character so far? So, I mean, for me, I don't know if I have one specific favorite. I think Buttercup is my favorite of the Powerpuff Girls. I really love Professor Utonium. Love the Gangrene Gang, especially Ace. And then, I've forgotten how, like, good and, like, interesting and, like, psychological, in a way, like, him's schemes are. Like, the ways in which he goes about trying to defeat the girls are more, like, well thought out and, like, trying to get into their heads. So I found that to be very, interesting and cool as well.
I will always like the Boogeyman, and I do find him interesting. I always like seeing Miss Bellum and, like, Bubbles' like, love of animals. I always like to see that stuff. Like, she'll stop and talk to a squirrel, or, you know, try to save some ladybugs from destruction. That's always cute. Okay, so the next episode is Uh-Oh Dynamo, which is thought to be a play on Uh-Oh SpaghettiOs, and it was broadcast May 26, 1999. Something I noticed was that both of these episodes contain a giant octopus. So the episode starts out with showing that Townsville is very fancy, but it doesn't have Mount Rushmore. So some of the things that they show is a stadium, museum, a high-speed train. There are 5-star restaurants, a bowling alley, a volcano top observatory, and that Townsville is basically a melting pot. So they show us a section that we've never seen before, Little Tokyo Townsville. So one day in Little Tokyo Townsville in Bonsai Gardens, the Powerpuff Girls are swimming. We kind of rarely see them in different outfits, so it's fun to see them in bathing suits. The professor and other parents are taking photos. Then a big eyeball pops up in the water, and out comes a giant, many-eyed, angry orange fish, which is possibly a kaiju. It sucks in air and inflates itself like a puffer or blowfish. It slaps the Powerpuff Girl family. "My babies!" the professor yells. The girls manage to deflate the fish, but the professor is worried because he was too slow to help. Later at home in his basement lab, the professor invents and builds. He is so tired and determined. He wakes the girls to see the Powerpuff Dynamo, which is a giant girl-fighting robot, and the Dynamo stands for Dynamic Nanotectronic Monobot. So this is supposed to protect the girls. It's superhero, super safety. Blossom says they don't need protection, but the professor makes them promise to use it if they really need it. During the following week, the girls stop an armed robbery, a giant octopus, put out a fire, stop a meteor in space, and stop a stick-wielding MoJo, while the Dynamo is sitting collecting dust and spiderwebs. At the end of the week, they go back to Bonsai Gardens, and the fish is back with an even bigger fish. Is this friend? Is it its mommy? I'm not sure we ever really find out. The girls struggle to fight it, and the fish is really tearing the place up. So the girls reluctantly use Dynamo after the professor threatens to ground them. So we get to see the Dynamo in the light of day, and it has red hair and a dress, a blue bow, a silver body, and yellow eyes. They operate Dynamo from the inside while the professor follows in a tiny helicopter. Dynamo covers herself in armor and rolls into a ball, which the fish smacks into building. The armor is a safety mechanism that the girls promptly turn off. The Dynamo employs all weapons at the fish, which all somehow miss and blow up Tokyo Townsville instead. The fish is still running amok and gets even bigger. It begins destroying the rest of Townsville as well. The girls employ Dynamo's pigtails and bow as a cutter and demolish buildings trying to get to the giant fish. He uses a sign to block the cutters. He breathes fire and uses a train as nunchucks. Now the whole city is on fire. The Dynamo uses a bowling sign as throwing stars and pops the fish onto Mount Rushmore. Townsville is destroyed. Dynamo does a robot dance, The mayor thanks the girls, but asks them to never use the robot again. They blame the professor. The day is destroyed. So the fish monster, the kaiju, is kind of like Godzilla. Again, I'm not sure how, like, most of the citizens weren't killed. How do they keep rebuilding Townsville? And the Dynamo might have been very helpful against the Rowdyruff boys, but otherwise I don't think the girls need this robot.
Yeah, they really don't. They're like OP enough. Like I said earlier, it'd be like giving Superman Batman's equipment.
Okay, yeah. And the only thing with, like, I was talking earlier about using the Dynamo against the Rowdyruff boys, it puts all three girls in one robot, so if the Rowdyruff boys were to split up, it really wouldn't be helpful. Because they all three are, I mean, I don't know if all three need to be inside for it to work, but
I don't know.
Did you have any other observations?
It could be like the Dynamo is like their big mechs in Pacific Rim, where you need like more than one person in there because like one person alone couldn't handle it.
Maybe.
So it was a really cool like homage to like Japanese giant monster movies, and giant robots are always fun.
They probably should have practiced
Yes.
in the Dynamo instead of waiting for, like, learning as they go with a monster they're having trouble fighting. They should have practiced just maybe out in the woods or something. And then that kaiju fish was voiced by Kevin Michael Richardson, aka the Boogeyman, or he made the noises anyway. The fish did not say words.
Also, it was wild to me that the professor basically he did build that thing in a day.
Yeah.
I know he's like a genius, but like how did he have all the tech and equipment right there? And then wouldn't he maybe need to test it a little bit himself to make sure it is properly safe and working properly and all that jazz?
Right. We saw when they deployed all the missiles at the fish and not a single one hit the fish, that it really wasn't properly calibrated anyway. And it was kind of funny. All they really needed to do was pop the fish.
Yeah, but they couldn't get it with like their punches and stuff earlier because it like I think Buttercup like bounced off of it and they tried to like kick and punch it and it kind of like showed them like crumpling their fists and feet. So it's like too tough even for them to break.
But it's funny that sign that just had them little pointy stars, and I mean maybe the lips of the fish were like its weak area.
Yes, it's glowing weak spot if you're a gamer.
Okay, so my question is, so they kind of showed different sections of Townsville, and then also just seeing them be little girls swimming. What other section of Townsville would you like to see them explore? Or maybe what other activities would you like to see them do? So I'm gonna say, like, maybe they could be in something like Girl Scouts. That could be fun, you know, like they're each trying to collect different badges. I could see Blossom, you know, she's got her whole sash filled with patches from all of the stuff that she's completed.
Yeah, it could be fun to see them like interact with other little girls. So we don't really get to see them hang out with other kids that often.
Yeah, just at school, they don't really have play dates or like who's their next door neighbor? Like, is there a little girl on their street that they play with? Or we don't see that.
Yeah, or do they have like Flanders? They're like a neighbor who's sort of like their Flanders who just like annoys them for no reason.
Yeah.
So I think it could be like fun to see them just like doing like other like small children activities or just like stuff you might have done more in the 90s. Like they go to the mall, they go to the arcade, they go roller skating, just like stuff like that. And of course, just like I would like to see them like hang out with more people their own age, because usually they're just like they're with the professor, they're with Ms. Bellum, or they're with villains, most of whom are adults or teens. We don't really get to see them hang out that much with other kindergartners.
Or maybe they have their own activities, because, like, kids will be, you know, like, maybe they're taking a dance class, or maybe they're playing soccer, or maybe one of them's learning how to play the piano. Something like that.
Yeah, or like Blossom's like in the Model UN or something.
Maybe not in kindergarten, but...
Probably not in kindergarten, but...
yeah.
I can see her being into that. Buttercup has karate classes, etc. Alright, so that is the end of our discussion for season 1 of the Powerpuff Girls. Next week, we're going to be talking about part 1 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which is called Phantom Blood. We might be doing another double episode again, and if we do, we'll be talking about Dio the Invader and A Letter from the Past. Thank you all so much for listening. Depending on whether you're listening to this on your podcatcher of choice or on YouTube, subscribe, review, hit the like and subscribe buttons. Maybe leave a comment. Maybe you had some thoughts on this season. Maybe you want to answer some of our questions that we pose at the end of each episode. Maybe you have some trivia that was really cool that you think we missed. That kind of thing. Yeah, so this will be your first time watching JoJo. This is kind of... I sort of rewatched it at one point, but I only got like about part way through part 3. So it's sort of like 2.5 times I will have seen it at this point.
I don't really know much about it. I'm not sure what to expect, so...
Yeah, I will tell you, it is a very weird show, as the title implies. It's kind of fun to go into it blind, though. There's like a lot of stuff that I just kind of knew like through cultural osmosis going in. But then there was some other stuff that was not spoiled for me, and then so I went in there and I was like, wait a minute, they have this in there? So, yeah. I think that's going to be a fun time. I will see you all next week for some JoJo. Goodbye.
Bye.